Hey everybody, I just wanted to give you guys a quick tutorial on SoundTrap and how you guys are probably going to be using this in your band and choir classes. Okay, so this is the main screen where you're going to be logging into SoundTrap. My screen might look a little different than yours, okay, but in essence you're going to see the same thing that I am. You're going to see a spot where you have your projects and maybe your groups, okay. You probably won't have any of these options, but you might have a resources tab, okay. We're going to select the Enter Studio button, and I'm going to give a tutorial on how to record stuff later, but for now I have already done this and I've already pulled something up that we're going to look at, okay. Now the first things I want to go over with you are just the buttons that are here for you guys and the options that you guys have. So up here you see File, Edit, Settings, and Tutorials. Okay, if I were to click on File, here's all the options. You can start something new, open something, maybe something that I've had recently, previous versions of this. So let's say I save this, but then I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't like it. You can click on previous versions and go back to something. It's a lot like a Google Doc if you were to do that. Okay, save as, export. You can export this to an MP3 or a WAV file if you wanted to share it with friends who don't have SoundTrap. Okay, share the project. And then exit to your profile. Edit, here's all the options under edit. If I was to select something in there, you would have all these options available. Settings, okay, and tutorials. So here's the undo button. It's kind of like the Control Z or Command Z if you're on a Mac. This is redo. Okay, save. This is important. Hopefully you guys will be saving a lot, because even though this is online, it's important that you guys save, because you don't want to lose the work if your computer runs out of battery. Okay, this one gives you also the previous versions, which you could have accessed over here under File, and this is download. So if you wanted to download this, you could do that as well. That's a second location. Over here you just double click on this and that gives you the option to rename the track to something that you would like. Okay, share and exit. Okay, now this one over here is an important one. This is called Snap to Grid, and what that does is that kind of controls the options you have with this. This is the playhead, and this cursor tells you where you're starting and where you're stopping. Okay, and if I hit Snap to Grid, what that does is snaps it to a certain beat within here. Now right now I'm zoomed pretty far out, but you will see when I'm doing this, it snaps in, snaps in, snaps in. If I were to turn that off, I can move this freely to any spot that I want without it snapping. Sometimes it's nice to have that, sometimes it's not. We'll talk about that in the recording tutorial as well. This is your grid settings, okay? And this one is cycle, okay? This thing is the cycle, and what that does is lets you have this maybe one section on repeat, so you can listen to it a bunch of times and try and figure it out. Here you could turn that off as well, okay? Now, over here this is where all of the loops are. Okay, so if you wanted to like make loops around what you're playing, you could select them. If you wanted to make tracks and just for fun, this is where you would find them as well. And then this button is for collaborators. If you wanted to maybe play a duet or sing a duet with someone, you could invite them to the track and then you could all record into here at the same time, which is kind of a cool function. That also functions a lot like a Google Doc if you were to both type something in at the same time. Okay, you would see that populate once you refresh. Okay, so we're going to get out of that. Now we're going to go down here towards the bottom. Over here you can see where my cursor is. Here's the zoom. So if I wanted to zoom into something, I could do that, and likewise I could also zoom out just to where I was. Okay, now let's look up here. We're going to zoom in, and if you see up here, I'm going to move this cursor over here. Okay, this is number 1. These large numbers are your measure numbers. So if you were to play something into here, you could tell what measure you're on. And since my snap to grid is on, you can see it's measure 1, beat 2, beat 3, beat 4. Now I'm in measure 2, beat 1, beat 2, beat 3, beat 4, so on and so on, to as many measures as you want. Okay, that is how that whole grid up here works. Okay, so you can also zoom in a little more, and you can kind of see the tick marks, you know, in here, but you can mess around with that on your own. when you have SoundTrap. Okay, now over here, these are all called tracks. So every one of these is a different track within this big project. Okay, now if I were to play this, okay, we're going to bring it back to measure 1 here. Now what you would notice is you have a bunch of options here. R is for record, so if I wanted to record something, I could. This is your volume, okay? And this one is solo the track. So if I did that and I hit that button, it mutes everything else and I only hear this. All right. Likewise, on the opposite, that mutes that track. So now I hear everything else except for that. Okay? Now this button is for, it's called automation, okay? And what that does is allows you to manipulate the track. You don't really have to worry about that because that's not going to be something we're focused on in this class, but you can know that that's there and you can mess around with that on your own, okay? Up here are track options, these little 3 dots, okay? And you can rename the track, you could duplicate it, delete it, don't worry about this one, it doesn't really apply to you. Export this single track as an audio file, and then here's some other options. You could also change the color, okay? So those are the basic functions. Now looking down here, here is your master volume, okay? Here's the time where you're at. This is also a spot to record, okay? When you record, you need to make sure that you select the correct track. I think in most cases, you're going to only have your track to worry about, so that's not going to be an issue. But if you're collaborating with some people, you need to make sure that you've selected the track that you want, and then you can go down and hit record. Okay, this is go back to the beginning. Now it's also stop. Okay, this is rewind, play, fast forward. If I wanted to change the tempo, I could do that right here. And then if I wanted to turn the metronome off or on, I could do that here. This one allows me to choose different metronome sounds, change the volume of the metronome, and then if I wanted to count in, or if I didn't, I could use that as well. Okay, so I hope that this helps you at least start to navigate some of this stuff in SoundTrap. And the next tutorial you guys are going to see is about how to set up recording for your instruments in band or choir class. Okay, thank you guys so much, and then good luck having fun in this. All right, see ya.